Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the 7th and penultimate round of the X2O Trophy, the Cross in Lille. What a day it was, Issam. Two spectacular races, both decided in a sprint. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for having me.
As said, two close races, also a close race in the All-Stars race, which was fun to see, but it really came down to these two men and women races at the end. In the men's race, we had a very large leading pack. A first decisive moment came roughly 15-20 minutes into the race. Paul Sauser tried to play some team tactics, Van Toerenhout putting up a roadblock for the rest. Iserbyt got away, but the opposition was alert. In the penultimate lap, Toon Aerts placed a big acceleration. Two people were directly on his wheel, Zweek and Iserbyt. Van der Putte was able to move in a bit later as well. It were mainly Iserbyt and Aerts duking it out in the final lap, but in the end Zweek made his move. As we neared the final part of the course, he was very late into the brakes in a 180 with a very late dive bomb on Toon Aerts. No crashes, clean racing, nothing Aerts could do. Zweek was in second position, and with that he lined himself up perfectly for the finish. He came onto the final straight in second, but he carried a bit more speed for the final sand passage. He outsprinted Iserbyt to take victory. The Sandman got it done. Second place went to Aerts, who also came around Iserbyt, who then ended third. Some Enter Sandman going on there is some very, very strong performance by Zweek. He never really seemed to doubt himself. He left it very late, but it turned out perfect for him, and we have to applaud him for that audacious move on Aerts.
He was very calm and he was very collected. It was clinical, and I think that he read the race very well, because he definitely tried to force something, but he saw that it was going to be difficult to make the moves. And I think in the last lap, when he entered that last lap, he was behind Van der Putte for sure. And the way he was able to just dispatch Van der Putte as he wasn't even there, and then after that dive bomb on Toon Aerts was also that was quite something. And I think that he never really panicked, and that is something that you need to have if you want to have such a last lap. You need to have the good legs for sure, but you also need to know what to do with those good legs. And I think that Zweek today had that combination. He was there, it was ready, it was all going to be going his way, and I think that in the end it was the one that was arguably the strongest, but definitely the smartest, that won the race. And yeah, that last sprint, there was not really a challenge that could face him there, because both Iserbyt definitely tried it, but I think that he just he played his cards and he lost, and that is sometimes what happens if you play the cards. You might fight someone with the better cards, and Zweek was today the one with the best cards.
Zweek has some of that Zlatan DNA in him. You wish me good luck, I don't need good luck, I decide when I'm good. I compete for the win. That's how he turns up to these postseason races. And really not even just these postseason races. You pointed it out yesterday that throughout this season he has repeatedly taken days off, wishfully and thankfully accepting a bad start or any convenient excuse really to drop out on a course that doesn't really suit him, or if the legs aren't really there. Yesterday it was the same. Today he sat back for most of the race, and this is his phase of the season. He's always good post-World Championships. He seems really good at carrying form through here. He is normally a rider that has relatively slow season starts, which is something that could help or could explain his performance now. With Van der Putte, he is up against another rider who's historically quite strong post-World Championships. And as you said, he did it well. He sat in the wheels, waited for his moment. He left it very late, but in the end he got it done. And that's the perfect way to do it. You want to make your move as late as possible, but before the others. Aerts in the post-race interview said, against that move from Zweek, there was nothing I could do. He just steamrolled by me. About Aerts, I do have a few things to remark. His performance today was not bad. He yes, was not the best through the stand, but it also wasn't horrible. I, however, again question the timing, Issam. How many times this season have we seen that Aerts goes in the penultimate lap or with 3 laps to go? Why does he always make his move at that moment in the race? Every time he does it, it doesn't work out. The one race he waited until the final lap to make his move was Namur, and he should have won that race. Why is that he always seems to get impatient and make his move relatively early? Because apart from that, his strategy, which he explained of, well, I wasn't really looking to lead as much as I did, but when I found myself in that leading position, I just decided to take it easy in the sand sections to recover and then make them suffer with a couple of big accelerations. That was good, but again, why make your final move in the penultimate lap?
Well, some riders just have that thing that when they have good legs, they want to show that, and then a race like today, you really have to be careful with the decisions that you make in terms of the effort that you will be spending throughout the race. And I think that Aerts didn't play his cards well. He looked, to be honest, I think that if he played it a little bit better, I think that he could have been a danger for Sveik. But that's obviously not how the race went, and Aerts has that thing, right? It's just every time it comes to these type of tactical things that will play a role in the race, he's just a letdown. He tries things that could maybe work on other type of courses, but then he tries it here, and you just kind of know that it's going to be a waste of energy in the end. And yeah, it's not the smartest way of racing. And I think today his performance, if you solely look at the performance, was very good. But it was just, tactically he wasn't great, and that is something that you can expect from Aerts. Aerts is someone that, he needs to have a very good day, and then he needs to have a course presented to him that is very, very tough for the competitors, and then he can really, play his cards well, because if he's going to be, at the front and not be tactically the greatest, he's still then able to make the difference. And a race like today, you're just not really able to make that difference, and then it's going to be the details that will count, and the details today with Aerts were terrible, to be honest.
This course definitely doesn't suit him, so overall, despite that I'm critical of his timing, I suppose we should conclude he rode a decent race, but that he has a few more things to improve on if he wants to win a lot of these races. He has one win, the untelevised race in Otegem, and he's collected a lot of podium places over the season. I counted his second places. I think he has 6 second places over the season and a couple more third. He's been really consistent. He's been really consistent, only finishing outside of the top 10 on 3 occasions this season. The course here did suit Eli Iserbyt. Again, another day where there are some incidents surrounding Paul Sauze. It wasn't as extreme as yesterday when Van Toerenhout was beefing with Kuhn. But again, today, Paul Sauze not really making themselves popular. You could hear some frustration creeping in when other team managers were interviewed on the broadcast during the race. Van Toerenhout made the blocking moves early on. Some head nodding from Aerts, why is this necessary? Why are you doing this so early? You're blocking everyone in the sand. Iserbyt had an incident with Aerts. That was perhaps the most significant one, but that one was definitely on Aerts, who made an aggressive move while running, really coming up for his place, really defending himself there. Probably a bit over the line and unnecessary there. It wasn't a major incident, but again, another day, another minor controversy around Paul Sauze and their team tactics.
Yeah, I guess we have to get used to that, and we are already used to that. I kind of agree with Aerts to the extent that I think that it was a little bit too early. I can understand from their point of view why they want to do that, because it's definitely beneficial. You can make the others work a little bit more, just put that little more effort in. I think Van Toerenhout today didn't really play a role after that because just didn't have the legs, or his role was done. And I think that it put Iserbyt in a good position for sure. And it's not illegal, but I think that you don't want to be in a situation in which all the riders are going to be against you. And I think that will be, if I were them, I wouldn't be doing anything in the next weekend. I think just take it easy. Don't be really trying to be that obvious with your team tactics. If you can help each other, sure you should, but don't make it that bad, because it's, you can really see that the frustration is there. And guess what? After the Worlds is always, I don't know what it is, but it's always that certain things just, the irritation is a bit higher than it normally is. And then the riders just, they get frustrated real quick and hot-headed, I guess. And then, things can happen. So let's just hope that it stays within reason. And that's probably the best thing that we can hope for, I guess. And for today, thankfully, it didn't play a major role. And we can look back on a great last lap.
Featuring in that final lap was also Niels van der Putte, the Jeans Man. We had the Jeans Man up against the Sand Man. Van der Putte is a rider who, as said, likes post-Worlds racing. He likes these type of courses here as well, relatively fast, a bit of sand. But he made a few too many mistakes in the final lap. The biggest one wasn't caught on camera, but he attributed to it a bit on his Instagram. Was unfortunate for him. Ultimately, it's been a really, really long season for him, so despite the fact that he is usually quite good in these races, it's no surprise that this year it's maybe a bit less. He's been racing pretty much every single weekend since the start of October. He's barely skipped any races. I don't know his exact number of race days, but it's really, really a lot. So the fatigue, which he also said a bit in his pre-race interview, was starting to creep in. Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Behind the Belgian top 4 of Zweek, Aerts, Iserbyt and Van der Putte, we find 2 Dutch riders, Nieuwenhuis and Van der Haar. Then Adams in 7th ahead of Mason, and 9th and 10th place go to 2 riders who had some chain issues with Van der Bos and Oorts. 2 riders, Issam, Van der Haar and Nieuwenhuis, both had relatively similar experiences. They suffered from a bad start. Groenendaal attributed to it quite funnily. He said, Nieuwenhuis, he starts on the 2nd, 3rd row, then he comes into the Bermuda Triangle, maybe you win 2 places, and the next corner you lose 4, you're just in the carfuffle, you're in the mix, you're in the pack, and it's really tough. So both he and Van der Haar needed to chase, and on this course, much like yesterday, it's not easy to pass people kind of the maximum achievable. Both of them could have probably done more if their start had been better, but that's also part of the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Both were hampered. I think Nieuwenhuis was arguably the stronger of the two, but it wasn't the greatest of starts for them. And as you say, that it's just difficult when you're on a course like this as well. It's just when you're a bit behind, it's hard to overtake, and then things can happen, because it's just the worst things can happen in the back. It's the in terms of crashes, in terms of issues, in terms of someone having a mechanical, weird things happen in the back, and it's especially on the first lap, and you don't want to be in it. You want to be ahead of that, and I think that Groenendaal was definitely right in that regard, that it's just very difficult to make up places first lap when you are so far down, because you just need that opening somewhere to get going. And if you're not going to get that opportunity, you just get stuck. And it was a shame, because you could really see that when Nieuwenhuis was also back, despite the effort, despite the time it took him to get back to the front, he looked very strong. And because you had to spend so much energy to even get back to the front, same goes for Van der Haar, it just ruins your race a little bit more, and then you're just not really able to capitalize on good legs if you have them. And yeah, that's in the end what we saw, and it's close racing, so you don't really want to have... everything has to go right, and it didn't go right for the 2 Dutchman riders, and then you have a compromised race.
Finally, I would like to point out that Cameron Mason had a very good ride today. Well, maybe not very good, but definitely for the standards of his season, this was a highlight, a positive. As we've alluded to a number of times, this has been a tough season for Mason. It's definitely not gone the way he hoped. After last year being disappointing in the second half as well, it must be a very difficult mental period for him to go through. I have no evidence that this is the case for Mason, but typically non-Dutch and Belgian riders on Dutch or Belgian teams have experienced extra pressure to perform. They've been regarded a bit more harshly by their management of those teams, because they are investing extra often to have these riders on their team. Hopefully that's not the case for him, and hopefully he's able to turn things around. Today was a solid outing by him. He had a good start for once, was able to really stick in the pack, sit in the wheels, surf through the sand, stick with them. He never was in contention for the podium, but if you're having a season like he had, you need to take any positive you can get, and the top 10 in a race like this, where on the men's side, really all the full-time cyclocross riders are still there, it's a much needed positive which he can hopefully carry on to into next season. We know that the talent is there deep inside of him. We're just hoping that it's going to come out again at some point. Then let's move to the women's race. This race was also a thriller. It came down to the final lap, but not after many movements before. Lucinda Brandt had a bad start, which allowed for different dynamics early on. No crash like yesterday, but the race and course type kind of lended itself for a somewhat similar scenario. Annemarie Vorst opened a gap in the first lap, mainly due to Ribeirol putting up some roadblocks for a lot of her teammates behind through the stand. She compensated for that by doing big pulls on the power sections, but Vorst had a gap for about 2 laps of some 10-15 seconds. Then Van der Heijden made her way to the front of the chasing group, closed down the gap, and the race could restart with a number of different riders up front. We had a lot of Crelan Corendon riders. They had Sanne Kant and Ribeirol. They also had Bakker and Van der Heijden. Then there was Vorst and Brandt, but it never really came down to team tactics. It was Van der Heijden who was setting the pace, and that led to 3 leaders in the final lap. Apart from her teammate was there, Bakker, and Brandt was also there. Brandt took the lead with a phenomenal outside line going into the S's early on in the lap. Arch took this line a number of times as well. It really worked well. Brandt piled on the pressure, opened the gap over Van der Heijden, but messed up the final sand section needed to run, which allowed Van der Heijden to come back. But in the sprint, Brandt still was able to take the win despite a bad start, making it another victory here, securing now also mathematically the win in the X2O Trophy, although there was never any doubt anymore. Second place went to Van der Heijden, with third place going to Manon Bakker. Issam, it has to be the case, right, that Brandt is starting to feel the fatigue, the tiredness from such an impressive season kick in. This bad start can be alluded to that. She had a phase this season with a number of bad starts. In recent weeks, it's also been a bit regarding the starts. But this was, I think, clearly the case, which we also kind of saw yesterday. She's feeling tired. She needs to push through the fatigue. And then she digs super, super deep. Yesterday it wasn't enough, but today it was enough. She takes the win. We can only take off our hats if we were wearing one for such willpower to perform in these post-Worlds races for a rider who's been doing this every single week of the season.
Yeah, it has been a crazy season. I mean, it's the World Championship didn't go her way, but I think that if you look at the way she has been able to perform, it's insane, to be honest. And today looked, at a certain moment in the race, I thought that it was not going to be possible to be on the podium, but you just saw that moment in which she was able to maintain the gap, and that's when you know that Brandt is always going to be able to rise to the occasion in the later phase of the race, and she was able to do that again. And I think, as you say, it wasn't the course that suits her well. She struggled with the sand for sure, but I think that she later on was able to deal with it better than she did before, and I think that it was just she was growing into the race. Maybe fatigue played a role with Van der Heijden as well, but yeah, in the end, I think that Brandt saved that streak that she has been that has been going on for the season in terms of podium results. Yet another win for Brandt, and I think that it is just it's an incredible season, and it's going to be interesting to see when this is going to end.
Brandt should perhaps thank her Trek Ballista helmet for taking the win today. Some massive aero gains from that helmet, racing with the aero Trek Ballista. Hopefully that podium streak doesn't end. It's going strong, and it's really nice to see. For now, 3 opportunities remaining this season for 3 more podiums. Fingers crossed it keeps standing throughout the entire season. That would be quite nice to see. There's 2 sides to it. There's the fatigue, which I mentioned, and then there's also the big endurance base, the big resistance that Brandt has. That's not something that only plays in this part of the season. That's something that we've seen in other races like Namur as well. Brandt has the ability to ride a race basically consistently without losing any time over the laps. Her first lap and her last lap, the difference is much smaller than of other riders. That's because she's really, really strong. She's able to maintain this high pace. That's where the difference is made. Most riders are able to deliver a fast lap like that once or twice, but then they can't keep it up. Halfway through, normally after 1 or 2 laps in the women's races, there's this real cutoff, and you can see it really clearly in the World Cup, which has this live timing screen where you can see the rundown of lap times from each rider. If you draw a line after normally 1 or 2 laps, depending a bit how long it is, you can see that the lap times of the riders further down increase substantially more than of the riders up front, and Brandt did that today. As you said, Van der Heijden rode a solid race. This is a good type of course for her, probably her preferred type of course, in fact. There was some criticism that she was too kind, but I don't really agree with that. In the final lap, when Brandt came around the outside, as said, that line was really great. Along the lake, when she didn't push through on the move next to Brandt, you can't see it from the drone or from the side pan that they give there, but there's ruts there. It's a bit sandy. The part where she came was not somewhere where you really want to fly in. It's then the safer option to tuck in behind Brandt. The reason that Van der Heijden came in the mix was because Brandt, who had looked to have the win in the back, made a mistake. The sprint looked a bit weird to me because she had some overspeed coming out of the final corner, looked to be willing to position herself to come around the outside. Then as she switched from the tops to the drops, she lost some speed, some momentum. I think ultimately in the end the legs just weren't there anymore. Brandt was the strongest, she deserved the win. But collectively, Crelan-Corendon delivers a fantastic performance. They position a ton of riders in the top 8, 5 to be precise. Everywhere where I looked, Crelan-Corendon, left, right, forward, front, back. Fans, spectators with a Kant mask, commentators, Kant mask, podium sitters, Kant masks, my email inbox, a press release. It was a real day for Crelan-Corendon here, Issam.
Yeah, it was crazy to see in a way, and it looked very good for a moment, or even maybe completely take the sweep the podium, but that's eventually the circumstances of the race didn't allow that to happen. But I feel that they can be happy with the base that they have in terms of the riders. I think that Van der Heijden, arguably, I think that it is easier to deal with today because of the result of yesterday. I'm not going to say that she would have been less nice or maybe try to defend that position a bit harder, but it definitely, in terms of it's easier to deal with. It's when you have that win already, you become a bit nicer, I guess. Behind that, I think with Bakker was today a very, very good race. It's late in the season, but these are the races that if you have an opportunity to bounce back from certain results, these are the ones. And I think that today she looked good. She got the course that suits her well in the sand as well. She was able to get through that quite well. And eventually just didn't have enough to fight for second or first, but yeah, was right up there and was able to make that happen, that podium spot. And I think that for her is also, that's something that you take with you. That's something you cherish and you will be very happy with. And, Kant was today, fought her heart out again. And it was a shame that she was not able to get on the podium. But I think that in the end, they solved the issue quite well, where, when she was invited on the podium and got the honor from the fans. I think that was, that was a special moment, and that looked very good. And I think that she can be also very happy with the performance today.
Kant, I think, could have done better if she had a better start. She was forced to chase the entire race. Her strength was really around the beach, especially in the first part of the course. You saw that a lot in the final lap. It was really visible that she made that closing move, that final push to try and rejoin the leaders, but she couldn't close it. I think the gap at the smallest was 4 or 5 seconds. She did very well, but the start really hampered her, and then she didn't have the power to follow Brandt through. Her teammate Bakker Some people suggested that she should have waited and let Kant pass, but the gap for that at the end was a bit too big. And for Bakker, these results are important. It's not been a good season for her. She struggled. This is not typically the type of course where she does best. That's more Dendermonde. She had a solid phase at the back end of the Christmas block where she finished 4th in Dendermonde. But apart from that, it's not exactly been like last year. She couldn't continue the progress that she made there when she was able to win the World Cup in Val d'Isle. Yes, it was not the most stacked World Cup, but this year the riders that she was around in those less stacked races, she was behind them. So it was a tricky year for her. She needs these results, and probably Issam, she was eager to get some revenge, because in Maldegem it's always these races, right? For some reason, shit goes down there. She got into a argument with Jinse Peters. Bakker went up the climb, held on to Peters' arm or steer to avoid falling over. Then there was a shoulder barge, which resulted in Peters eventually giving Bakker a slap, both riders being disqualified from the race.
Yeah, that also happened, and as I said and stated, it's something that is quite usual after the World Championships, that just the tempers fly high, and it's the emotions sometimes are not that much controlled. But it's part of the sport, I guess. It's just sometimes sportsmanship can be thrown away a little bit. It just doesn't need to be in habit. I think it was a bit harsh to take them both out, but I can see the point. And in the end, Maldegem is long gone and forgotten in a way, especially now if you're able to get back on the podium. And after a season in which that wasn't the case, I think that Maldegem can be a race that will be set behind, because it's at this point doesn't really matter what happened there. I think what happened today is the thing that will be remembered more than what happened in Maldegem.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Behind the Dutch top 3 of Brandt, Van der Heijden and Bakker, we indeed found Sanne Kant in her final home race. She lives about 2 blocks away from the course. Worst finished 5th ahead of Riberol, Brouwers in 7th. Casasola struggled in the sand to 8th place, with Van Alphen in 9th and Larissa Hartog completing the top 10. Issam, one rider maybe to pick out here was Riberol. She's a rider who's typically struggled with starts, but today took the whole shot. What did you make of her race?
It was a Riberol that definitely wanted to make a good impression today, but I feel that in the end it was just not really able to get through the course well. I think that in the end also it's just the way she has been racing so far this season, at least this later phase of the season, especially after the Belgian Championships, we haven't really seen a very strong Riberol, and I think that is just a continuation from what we saw today. She tried. It was definitely not the trying that didn't help her today, but I think that just with the circumstances, the sand and all that, it just didn't really work for Riberol. And then at a certain point, it's just the mistakes will cost you more and more, and that's how Lille goes. It's a race in which you, in the beginning, you might think that you have a chance, and then slowly but surely that feeling goes away, and then you just, before you know it, you're kind of out of contention for even a top 5.
My question is Riberol actually that much worse than when she became Belgian champion? She disappeared. In Benidorm, she disappeared with a 50th place. But if you look at her results, are they that different on the type of courses that don't suit her? She was good in Dendermonde with an 8th place. She was 5th in Gullegem. Less stacked race suits her really well. But Belgian champions carry a lot of prestige, and the jersey and the championship carries a lot of merit in Belgium. But 11th in Maasmechelen, 11th in Louvain, is that much worse? Well, that World Championship result definitely could have been a bit better. That didn't seem to be her best day, but these 6 places here, are they an improvement if we factor in all the riders that aren't there anymore? I would argue that it's quite in line with her season, but because she finally won that Belgian title, that the expectation pattern has shifted, and I don't think that's justified. Compare this to her early season: 10th in Ruddervoorde, 12th at the European Championships, 12th in Merckxplas, 11th in Hamme. These are the type of courses that don't suit her. 13th in Antwerp. The courses that suit her a bit better or are less stacked, those results are quite in line. 6th in Herentals, podium in Lille, that was a course that suited her a lot. That win in Loenhout, which was not a stacked race at all. And then again, as I said, those results in Gulligem and Dendermonde. She is a rider who's very prone to course type. This is not a course for her. She struggled a lot in the sand. I said she put up some roadblocks. She was quite slow on those sections, but quite powerful outside of them. And that's what we know from Ribeirol. So I'll stick with my statement that the expectation pattern has unfairly shifted now she is in that jersey. But yeah, here we are. She'll probably need to get used to that if you're the Belgian champion. That will conclude it, Issam, for this week. We'll have a midweek episode, which we already recorded discussing the World Cup schedule. We recorded that on Friday because the race in Kokzijde got announced. Then we will have next weekend Sint-Niklaas and Brussels in one podcast. Another midweek episode before we conclude the season with Oostmalle, which will be broadcasted, which is a nice surprise.
Absolutely, it is, and I think we had our opinions about the World Cup, so I think that is definitely one that the listeners want to listen to, and maybe they have their own opinion on that and can share that through the various ways that we have, and I think it's the season is just closer and closer coming to an end, and the realization is kicking in, especially with the races we had today. Lille is in my opinion, arguably, if you look at the races that we have after the World Championships, is probably the best one. And that is also now behind us. So it's we're counting down.
Yeah, and we have that World Cup podcast, as you said, with quite some takes. It's always nice if you engage, so feel free to leave a comment or write an email. Email address you can use will be in the show notes, but is noah@cyclocross.com, and cyclocross has 3 S's at the end. The reason we postponed was that Kokzijde announcement and also to take a bit of rest after a busy World Championships week. Thanks everyone for listening. Issam, thank you for being here, and we will be back. Goodbye.